Hey guys, Tepcocyclerepair. It's a beautiful day here in North Carolina, and it's back to work. I'm done with my vacation. I'm off from my regular job, so it's time to get some things done. And today we're going to be putting a clutch on this 250 Rebel, and I also have a VTX 1800 that lost spark in one of the cylinders. I got fork seals to do on a CRF 150, oil change, maintenance on that. I got a bunch of things to get done today. All right, so there's a lot of different clutch kits for this thing. You can get, of course, get the OEM one. You can get the EBC kit. You can get a couple different kits. And you can get just the fibers, get the metals, and the cost range is humongous, okay? So when you go onto like eBay or to Amazon, you can find full clutch kits like this, right? It's the whole unit right here. But if you read the reviews aren't the best. But if you really read them, you can find out what's going on. And what they're having problems with is these bolts snapping right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and you can get this for under $30, a full clutch basket set and everything. So what I'm going to do is take this whole setup right here, and I'm only going to be using the metals and fibers, all right? So for basically under $30, you get a full metal and fiber set. So I'm going to take these off. I'm going to use as many Honda parts as I can that's already on the bike, so the basket, the hub, everything. I'm going to leave all that in there. I'm going to leave the springs in there. I'm going to use the original spring tensioner bolts that are in there, the pressure plate, everything I'm going to use on the Honda. I'm only going to take out the fibers and the metals out of this kit right here, throw them in there, and we should be good to go. I'm going to take some measurements to compare the old ones to the new ones and make sure the thickness between all of the plates is better, and we should be good to go. The metals and fibers in here are going to be just fine. It's these other cheap aluminum pieces that they're using and these cheap bolts that are snapping. We're not going to use any of that garbage, so we're going to use all the Honda stuff for that. Let's tear it down. All right, so I just used an impact to get these out, and these are what people are complaining. Now, you can snap these just by, not using them properly. And I'm not sure if it's the installation technique that's snapping them, because, you tighten these things in when you're tightening them down, because there's a spring underneath each one of them. When you tighten them down, this plate kind of gets twisted like this if you don't do it evenly. And some people will tighten this one all the way down, and then they'll tighten this one all down. It puts a lot of stress on the bolt. So that could be the reason why they're snapping, but we're not going to worry about any of that stuff. This piece right here, aluminum piece, is very lightweight. I don't know, we're not going to use that one. These springs, a lot of people like heavy-duty springs. I'm not a fan of heavy-duty springs. Usually the only thing heavy-duty springs does is it gives you more arm pump and fatigue, but they do put more pressure on the plates if you're having problems. But, I mean, just looking at the quality of that spring, we're not going to use those either, okay? So we'll take all these out. This pressure plate on the outside and the whole center piece right here. All right, this hub, we're not using this either. All right, I don't know, the quality there too. I mean, it's a brand new piece and looks like it's beat up. So we're not using that. All right, so here's this ring right here and all these plates. So if Honda has the same ring in here, when we break it down, all these plates look good, and then our fibers, all right, they're all looking good. That's what we're going to be using. These are already a little bit wet with oil. You can see that in there, so we're not going to worry about soaking these. It has some assembly oil on them. That'll be fine. As soon as you put some oil on the bike, they'll soak. You crank it a little bit, and they'll be wet with oil. If you're worried about soaking them, feel free to soak them, but you don't really need to. I still do it, but I'm not sure that it's a necessary thing to do, we'll say, okay? Like I said, they're all wet from assembly oil and stuff. You can see they're all wet. All right, so let's take the bike down. All right, so first off, we got to drain the oil. Got the dipstick out. The oil drain for this is underneath here. All right, it is right there. All right, so we're going to drain all the oil out, and then we're going to take all these 8mm bolts out. So we got them all along here. All right, for the cable here, you can just take out these two for the bracket, and that will loosen all the tension, and then you can pull the cable out. And to get the cable off, all right, you just have to push it down a little bit, and there's a groove right behind it right there, you can see. So you just push this cable down a little bit, and then take it out. So when you take these two 8mm, you'll have a bunch of play in the cable. Just move it down a little bit, slide it over here, and then this will be free. And here's a better look at where that drain bolt is. It's a 17mm, right up in there. All right, so first off, getting to the drain plug. We're on the left side of the bike right here, 17mm, right underneath here, all right? Right up, if you look, right in, back in there, okay? You can see the wrench going on and off right there. That's where that is, 17mm. All right, after letting that drain, we're down to a drip here, so I'm gonna put the plug back in. All right, alternatively, guys, if you have an oil siphon, you can stick it down into here, and it does really good. You can work the hose down there, and it pulls it all the way down. It only leaves a drip if you pull a drain plug off. I've tested it. It's just fine. The way this plug is on the bike, it's kind of a pain to get back in. It's kind of just a tight little area to get it in there and turn it in. So siphon it out and feel just fine with that, and don't even worry about it. I prefer to siphon it out of these, but those are your two options. All right, so with these bracket bolts out, let me show you what I mean here with this cable. All right, you can see the extra amount right there in the cable when you pull that housing back, right? So we just got to get it, push it down a little bit and get it out of that groove. All right, just like that. All right, so now that's clear. All right, so with all the bolts out here around the whole thing, they're all the same size, okay? So keep that in mind. Don't worry about that if you drop one. They're all the same size. If you got any crusty ones like this, make sure you get those cleaned up before you put them back in. All right, so with all the bolts out here, we're going to have to get this off. Now, there's a gasket behind here. If you're trying to save the gasket, try to be gentle. Hopefully you can reuse it. I would get a new one. The new one didn't come in the mail, and I got to get this bike done, so we're going to, hopefully it doesn't tear. So there's a little tab kind of right here that you can put a wooden handle back behind through the frame here. Tap it a couple times, it'll come loose. You can tap it, just kind of work it with like a rubber mallet. You don't want to crack this, so just be gentle in what you're doing. The hammer's getting old. Now I got an oil pan underneath it just to catch any extra oil that might come out. All right. And this little pin is probably going to fall out on you as well. Okay, this one with a spring in it, and it just sits inside of here. Right there. All right, that's what it looks like. It's got a little cutout in it. It can only go in one way. You rotate it, and there's a pin in there. Just put it in, and you're good. We're going to take this off. We got 10 millimeters here. All right, and we're going to measure the clutch fibers and everything here after we take it off. So, all right, so take these off here. And then here, just go back and forth with these. You can see how much that plate moves. So just go really easy. I use this in another video. It doesn't have torque settings or anything, but you can use trigger control. It'll get to the point where there's no tension on the springs anymore. Then you know you're good. All right, here we are. All right, so this is out. So bearing here, make sure this is smooth and everything looks good in here. Take our springs out. Let me show you the difference, what I'm talking about spring quality. That OEM spring that I just took out right here. Look, it's even longer than the aftermarket spring. All right, and this, the quality of it is just so much nicer. So we're going to keep all that stuff Honda. All right, so let's get our springs out. All right, so we have a nut in here that has to come out, and it also has a lock pin in there that we're going to have to bend back. So with a small pick, you can get underneath there and just tap it, and we're going to knock that out before we take this off. And you need a special socket for this. It's got 4 tabs. Let me grab that and show you. All right, you can see the tab right there where it's punched in. So that's a very small, tight area. It's not really big. It might look bigger in this camera, but I use a small punch. So I have a small punch with a sharp tip on it, and I'll just put it in there and just kind of work it and punch it up and get it up out of the way. All right, and then I have this tool right here, and And this is just a generic tool that I've had. It works 2 different sizes, but to fit right in there good, it's got a 1/2 inch driver in the center, and then we can just knock that out. So let me get that pin bent back first. All right, so with that bent up out of the way, you can put it in 5th gear now and just hold the brake down so it everything doesn't rotate. I'm going to use an impact, and I'm using that tool. I'm just going to give it gentle taps here till it comes off. It's about 54 foot-pounds is what we're trying to get off here. All right, so we have the nut right there with that little section that we have to bend out of the way. We have a washer. All right, and then we're going to take this pressure plate out, and we're going to reuse this one. This is the Honda plate. You can take the whole assembly off. 1 unit, just like that. All right, so we're going to reuse all that stuff. Now, let me show you a couple things to look for while you're in here. On the clutch basket, the grooves on here, if these are really bad, you're going to replace it. These are, they got some wear on them, and they're not extremely bad, so it should be all right for now. The pressure plate here. All right, so this pressure plate, that's the clutch hub in the center. Same thing, going to look for wear. There's some shiny marks, but no real wear. It has the same spring here, so we're going to reuse that one. We're going to reuse that one off of the Honda after I clean it up. I dropped it on the floor. But we're going to measure this whole stack, so let's get this stack measured here. All right, so let's measure some things up. Here's the brand new one on the right, and this is the OEM Honda on the left. And you can see these are a lot darker. And the problem with this one was that the clutch was adjusted improperly. It was too tight on the handle, and I'll show you guys how to do that when we get back together, but ended up burning these out. So let's measure our fibers here. 2.66. 2.91. All right. Fibers are going to be good. Overall stack length here with just the metals, just a pack. Okay, the fibers and the metals here. 2703. $26.18. All right, so you can see how much thinner this is now. That's why we're getting a lot of slippage out of it. So what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use the new fibers and metals right here. I'm going to use the compression ring out of the Honda. We're using all the Honda parts that we can. So this will go back together just using the fibers and the metals. And this is a good, cheap way to get a full clutch pack for your bike for under $30. All right, let's go put it back on. We're also using the Honda pressure plate right here, so it'll all go back together just like that. All right, so I'm going to assemble everything before I slide it into here. But remember, if you take this out, there's a metal ring that's in here, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, this is it right here. All right, and here's the cheap hub that I got. It sits right inside there. Now, this is the one from Amazon, and you can see that this one, brand new, is already rusted. That's why I don't like using these parts. So I'm going to be using the Honda hub with that Honda. The ring's right in there. It's stuck in there with oil right now, but it moves in there. You can see. Make sure that that's in there. Don't forget that. So now I got to take it and we got to assemble it back together. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in each one of these metals. I put it together just to be on the safe side, and then I'll drop it all back together like this, one at a time. All right. So when you're putting it back together again, make sure you put your pressure plate in the right way. So if I put it on, say, this way here, it won't sit down all the way down onto the club, and you have a bunch of play right there. Pay attention to that, and if that happens, don't get alarmed. Just rotate it until it drops all the way in like that, so you have a full pack again. And then we're going to put it back in. Line up all your fibers so it'll drop back in nicely. We're just going to work it in here onto the teeth of the spline in the center. Come on now. that. All right, you see here, okay, now that everything is in here, if the springs are in here, you're not going to have any play, all right? So let's get the springs back in the center plate. All right, so with that back in there, we're going to go ahead and put our washer back on. And our nut. Now, when you're putting this back on, it's 54 foot-pounds on here. If you don't have a torque wrench, the nut only goes on. The threads start at one point, screwed all the way in until your lock pin is close to where it should be in the same point, and you'll be right about there. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to put it into torque, and I'll show you where it ends up. Okay. All right, you can see where it's at now. Like that's where the punch is, and that's where the groove is. So I'm not up to torque yet. Let me get it torqued. I got it in 5th gear. I'm going to hold the brake and use a torque wrench. All right, so here we are, torqued down to 54 foot-pounds, and you can see it's right here in the same place. So I'm just going to knock that back down again, and it will be locked into place. All right, so we're going to put the Honda OEM springs back in. Again, I like the stock spring strength. Unless you got a really high-powered bike, you're building something custom, you don't have to worry about heavy-duty springs. It's just going to make your forearms tired quicker. All right, I'm using the Honda bolts. So put the Honda bolts in here. These go to 9 foot-pounds is what they get torqued to. So we're just going to start these in. Always start these things by hand. I'm going to spin these in all the way, alternating back and forth, just so it pulls it down evenly. So I'm just going to go nice and easy. These are very low torque values in these, and these get stripped out a lot. I see people bringing me bikes with the clutch hub stripped out from over tightening these. Okay, and now I got this torque wrench set at 9 foot-pounds, or it's 108 inch-pounds. I'm just going to work these down a little bit at a time. There you go. Good. Good. Actually, we are all fully torqued down. 9 foot-pounds. All right, so we're going to put the cover back on. That's all there is. Now, you shouldn't have any play in here. All these fibers and metal should be good to go like that. All right, don't forget the piece that goes in the end here. I took it down because it fell again. But we're going to put that back in and put the cover back on. Pay attention when you put it in. Here we go. All right, let's put the cover back on. So, guys, while you're in here, this is your oil pickup. All right, you want to check underneath here and look at the screen and make sure there's no debris or anything in there. You might as well clean that if you need to. Just get in there with a Q-tip or something if you got to get any debris out, and make sure that's clear before you put it together. Might as well. If you do these enough by hand, you'll know what the proper torque is. If you're new, torque them on using a torque wrench. And if you're an experienced mechanic and haven't done a clutch on these yet, do them to about 7-8 foot-pounds. Now these are 8mm heads on a 6mm bolt. People jump on me about if I say it's an 8mm, but if you tell the new guy, grab me an 8mm, grab me a 6mm wrench, they're going to bring you a 6mm wrench, not an 8mm for a 6mm bolt. Let's not get silly out there. This is the only one I didn't have. I can't find my short. I'm moving boxes right now from one shop to the other, so things are a little bit hectic. All right, so let's put this cable back on. All right, so the cable, remember you got this little section right here. We just got to hook that into here. I'm going to try to do it with one hand. All right, so you can push it underneath. All right, so that's hooked on. Let's get the plate back in. Just got to rotate the plate around. I'm going to show you the most important thing when I'm done with this here, so pay attention. All right, so back up here. You see how this is right here? This is too much play, but you got to have play. So crack the lock nut here, tighten this up. The other one had no play. It was super tight here, okay? So you want a little bit of play in there to make sure that the clutch is fully relaxing and the springs are pushing all the plates together, okay? If you have no play here, it's going to act like you're riding with the clutch slightly pulled, and that's going to cause the plates to slip and you're going to burn it out super fast, all right? So make sure that you got a little play in here. That much play is just perfect. And now you know that there's no tension from the cable pulling the metals and fibers apart and burning your clutch out. So make sure after your first ride, after your new clutch, check it again, reset it again. Always have play right there. And you should clutch should last a really long time on these 250s. All right. All right, so putting oil back in right here. It's 1.6 quarts. It recommends 10W30. Use whatever oil you like. All right, so with 1.6 quarts in, which is about 1,516 cc's if you want to use cc's or milliliters, I'm going to put the dipstick back in. We're going to start it up, run it for a little bit, and then I'm just going to pull it out and check it. And when you check it, you don't thread it all the way in. When you're checking it, you just dip it in like that and take it out to check it. That's how you check it. All right, so let me fire it up. Let all the oil circulate through the engine. We'll let it sit for a little bit, and then we'll check it. All right, so we'll let all the oil settle back down for a minute, and then we'll check it. All right, oil looks good. We're good to go. That's how you do it. All right, guys, so that's it for the clutch job. Like I said, I wouldn't use all the parts in that kit. Just use the fibers and the metals, and you're good to go. Use all the Honda parts whenever you can, and it should stay together and no issues. Make sure you adjust that lever properly, or else you'll burn up your new clutch. So with that adjusted, take it for a test ride, recheck your adjustment, and you're good to go, guys. Hopefully this helps you out. Please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for further notifications. Until next time, this is Tepcocyclerepair.